Hello, and welcome to Bear Necessities. My name is Bear, and today we're going to finally be talking about the Prismatic questline. So once you get level 50 and you join a raid guild, most likely everyone will ask you, hey, have you started your Prismatic? Where are you on your Prismatic? Well, today we're going to go into a deep dive, talk you through the quest, talk a little bit about the lore, and in the end, show off some glowy weapons. First, a few prereqs for this questline. You want to go out and kill a bunch of low-level orcs in the Frostfang Sea or Common Lands to make sure you do your orc language. Second, go to Thundering Steppes, kill a bunch of giants, and finish the giant language. Both are necessary for the questline, so let's get them out of the way. The questline starts with not really a quest, but more like a flagging of sorts, and it lets you start the quest. So in the Solusek Valley area of Lavastorm, you'll see a high elf named Seber the Historian, who tells you there's a sage trapped in Maiden's Gulch, which is a nearby instance at the end of the ravine. Whenever you click on the Maiden's Gulch door, there should be a special instance that will be available called Maiden's Gulch Rescue of the Sage. Click in with some friends. You'll have to kill a couple Dracoda and Virdere the Vicious, who is keeping the sage hostage. After you talk to the sage, he starts up a quest, and you'll need to go speak to Lord Nagafen. Nagafen, as I've said in other videos, is a fire dragon who resides at the deepest part of Soul Eye. If you played EQ1, you'll recognize him because he and Lady Vox, the ice dragon, are two of the premier raid targets in EverQuest 1. 500 years later, we're still dealing with dragon drama, but this time it's in a much different way, so let's get down to him. There's a few ways to get down to Nagafen. One, you can jump down, and if you have enough run speed, you can kind of float over to an island near Nagafen's lair. Or two, if you have friends and guildies. Most of the time, guildies will have an alt parked down near the Oratorium of Thyre, which is an instance kind of close to it, and they usually can zone you into a deserted version, and you can just run over to Nagafen. However, if those are not options, you do need to fight down through all of the giants, the giant fortress, until eventually you get to this instance that I was talking about just earlier, called Oratorium of Thyre. This is an interesting small instance, and there's a few elementals to kill, a few roaming giants, and then you get to Flame Lord Thyre. So someone has to hill and talk to the Flame Lord. I'd recommend a ranged class doing it, maybe a pet class, because after you talk to him, 2 Afrides will attack you. And then once you hail again, the person who started the script will get teleported into a floating cage above the lava. And the group must kill the Flame Lord in order for that person to get teleported out of that cage back to the group. The good thing about actually doing this once is you'll get a deserted version. So each time you come back down, if you want to zone in, you can actually just click on the door. It'll say Oratorium of Fire Deserted, and you can just walk through the instance at that point. So however, what I'll say is my recommendation is to get someone from your group, your raid, your guild, and have someone park down there after you have completed it, so that they can zone people into the deserted version. And because you do have to return to Nagafen multiple times in the quest line, and this is going to save you a ton of time. Alright, so now we get into Nagafen's lair. There he is, the towering red dragon. Well, you come to realize that you don't actually speak Draconic, so you can't speak to him. So you talk to the giant next to him. His name is Major Domo Infernus, and this is actually why you need your giant language. And he'll tell you that you can't speak to the dragon. You need to return to the sage in order to learn how to speak Draconic. So the sage that you rescued earlier has actually returned to the top of the Oracle Tower in Antonica. So get a portal out there and talk to the sage. He tells you that you must find 26 translated runes of Elder Draconic or Dragon, And it's funny because it's 26 runes. I'm assuming that the devs did that because there's like 26 letters in the English alphabet. I don't know. But you need to translate those runes in order to learn the Draconic language. And this quest is actually called To Speak as a Dragon. So if you're new to the game and you've never really seen Norath, this is actually an awesome quest because you're about to see it. You're about to see all the world's nooks and crannies for the first time, because these runes are scattered everywhere, all over Norath. And I'm not sure how anyone ever did this without a guide, but I'll link it in the description below. So you have to go all over the place, click these little clips of paper, rolled up scrolls, and you find all these translated runes. So most of them, well, I'd say just a fair amount of them are in zones where everything is gray. So like, you know, you may actually have to sneak into the opposite city. Well, you do have to sneak into the opposite city, but you've got ones there, you've got ones in like Stormhold, and so a lot of these like lower level zones. So it's nice to be able to kind of roam around these zones, look around if you've never been there, and just, you know, get the lay of the land. But there is a small percentage that are in the high level zones like Permafrost, Solai, Khazak-Tul, and Obelisk of Lost Souls. So you may want to gather up a group to get those. I luckily was doing this while a lot of people are still leveling, and I was kind of just able to like piggyback on top of groups. I would help them out. I would heal from outside the group, or I would do DPS from outside the group, and I was able to pick up a lot of the runes by just following groups that were clearing down. Some of these groups were actually going for the runes as well. So usually, if you're in a situation like that, they'll let you do it, and it's totally fine. So once you get all your runes, you have to come back to the Sage of Ages in Antonica. This will give you a fabled tablet, and it's heirloom. So heirloom just means that you can transfer it between any of the characters on the same account, on the same server. This is actually really nice because if you wanted to do prismatic on other characters on the same account, when you get to this point where you have to find all the runes, all you have to do is take that tablet out of your shared bank or whatever, right click it, and you'll have an option to like read the runes, and you won't have to actually go and find them all again. So you'll be able to finish To Speak as a Dragon very quickly. Alright, so the next quest in the series is called Fire and Ice. But before we go into that quest, let's talk a little bit about the history of prismatic dragons, and a little bit about the original prismatic dragon, Karaferm. So early on in the history of Norath, a dragon named Kildrukan, who was appointed the leader of the Council of Elders, decreed that no dragons of opposite influence should ever mate. This is, of course, out of fear of creating a prismatic dragon who were known to be the most powerful dragons in the world. However, these two dragons, one of fire and one of ice, essentially fell in love and asked to be given exception. They weren't given permission, so the two dragons just did it anyways, and thus Karaferm was born. Karaferm directly translates to Almighty Sun in Ancient Draconic. Kildrukan finds out about the child, he kills the parents, and he takes in the dragon. And oddly enough, he actually develops a liking for the child. And instead of killing him at that time, he nurtures and trains him into a fierce general for the Claws of Ishan. The Claws of Ishan are the factions of dragons that live on Velias, and they're currently, around this time, in a civil war with the Ring of Scale, which reside on Norath. I won't go into all the details of that war, but essentially, as this war goes on, Karaferm succeeds in battle over and over again, and he develops a lust for destruction and chaos that can't be quenched. However, at this point, the Claws of Ishan and Council of Elders take note of this, and they can't let him continue because they're afraid that he's just going to grow more and more enraged and cause destruction all around him. At this point, Kildrukan, who is still in the Council of Elders, him and his followers, who essentially are Karaferm fans, for lack of a better term, they essentially defect and they go into hiding because at this point, and this is not 100% confirmed, but the idea is that the Council of Elders calls a Vishan, overpower Caraferm, and they subdue him into a tomb, which is known as Sleeper's Tomb. And after that, they actually banish Nagafen, the fire dragon, and Vox, the ice dragon, to separate sides of Norath in their layers of Solu-6i and permafrost. And they put warders to guard Caraferm in Sleeper's Tomb. And as I said before, Kildra Khan and his followers had defected, they escaped, and they're in hiding, awaiting for the eventual awakening of the Sleeper and the return of Caraferm. Alright, so in the timeline of EQ2, Caraferm, the Sleeper, has already been awakened, and he's actually escaped Norath. And so that's an event that happens years earlier in the time of EQ1. But the damage and destruction that Caraferm caused is still on the minds of many around Norath. Alright, so back in our EQ2 days. So Vox has been destroyed, and only her spirit remains. But with this quest, Fire and Ice, Nagafen hatches a plan to revive her. And to do this, he asked you to kill these 3 Dracota, loot their essences, and use them to bring Vox back to life. So these 3 Dracota are in different raid instances, but they are definitely on the easier side. So honestly, I think there's pugs doing this now. One is in Kova Decay in the Thundering Steppes. One is in the Trembling Lagoon in Firat. And finally, there's one in Miragul's Menagerie in Everfrost. So once you gather these essences, head with your raid force and anyone who needs the quest update to Permafrost. So behind the section where the contested Vision of Vox is located, there's these big doors, and you can enter Vox's lair. So when you get in there, you need the person who has the essences to consume them. Make sure you consume them in the following order. It's soul, heart, and mind. And once you consume these, that same person needs to click the orb in the middle of the room, and they're going to die. So you essentially sacrifice yourself to spawn the living Vox. So as you'll see, a kind of zombified looking Vox is revived, and you can actually go up and talk to her. So once you go up and talk to the Vox, we learn that King Draic has actually taken the prismatic that Nagafen and Vox are essentially trying to hatch. So at that point, we're going to take our raid force to a special version of King Draic's instance. It's called Draic's Chamber, Throne of the Kramis King. And you're going to kill him. So there's some ads that spawn, you kill him, he's going to die, and halfway through he'll respawn, kill him again. So once he dies, something very surprising happens. The Sage of Ages teleports into the room, walks up, and says, because there's this prismatic egg that you've just discovered, and you realize the Sage of Ages has actually been Darethar all along. And so Darethar is essentially an enforcer of the Ring of Scale. Remember when I was mentioning the factions of dragons that split off of Claws of Ishan and came to Norath way back then? And he's essentially been sent to kill both Nagafen and Vox for defying the decreed law that was put into place by Kildra Khan way back when. And because they're planning to either hoard these prismatic eggs or hatch another prismatic dragon. We also learn that Darethar is the enforcer that's actually responsible for killing Vox through utilizing there's an artifact that's called the Harness that's been given to him by the Ring of Scale, which he uses to control Dracota. So Darethar swoops in at this point, essentially thanking us for leading him to the egg, grabs the prismatic egg, and ports away. So after learning all of this news, we got to go back to Lord Nagafen again, and we tell him of the Sage of Ages deception, which is actually the name of the next quest. Nagafen tells you that in order to get revenge for this deception and retrieve the prismatic egg, we need to confront Darethar, and in order to do that, we have to collect 4 arcane rings. So this is going to lead you to 3 more Drake instances, similar to the ones before, but these Drakes are a bit harder. One of them's in Fallen Gate, one of them's in Khazad-dûl, and one of them's in Antonica. The Fallen Gate and Khazad-dûl ones are pretty simple. They're pretty tank and spank. You know, some of them have maybe like AoEs that you have to cure, or like little spot cures, but pretty much they're pretty tank and spank fights. Now the one in Antonica is a little bit different. There's actually 3 Drakes, and 2 of them are essentially fakes, but they still have a decent amount of hit points, and then there's 1 real one. However, all 3 of the Drakes have AoEs. All 3 of the Drakes hit pretty decently hard, so you need to make sure you get debuffs on immediately. And you have 3 tanks, and get each tank to pull the Drake and kind of turn it like away, because there's conal frontal AoEs that each tank does. So once you get each one of those Drakes, you can make sure you kind of turn them away from the raid and turn them away from each tank, and then kill the lower HP Drakes first, and then you kill the last one. Make sure you have a lot of elemental resist, get debuffs in fast, keeps heals up, and keep those tanks living. Once you kill like one of them, you know, the fight becomes drastically easier. Once you kill the second one, it becomes even more drastically easier. So that one's a tough one though, so keep that in mind. And then finally, the last ring you actually get from some orcish mercenaries in Deathfist Citadel. So there's actually an orc that you want to talk to in Zek, and then you'll be able to go into Deathfist Assault. You enter from the sewers, and it's pretty simple instance. You just kind of fast track yourselves. Like, you don't have to do all like the unlocking that you do in normal Deathfist Citadel. You can just kind of fast track yourself up to the top of the Citadel. You kill the last named, and he actually gives you the 4th ring. So yeah, once you obtain those 4 rings, let's return to the Tower of Oracles in Antonica, and you'll realize that the orb that was on the top floor is actually how we're going to get into Darethar's island. So get your raid force together and get ready for Darethar. You'll actually press that. The person who's on the quest and has the rings will be able to press that orb, and it'll actually teleport everyone to Darethar's island, which is actually, and oddly, the Isle of Refuge. So it's kind of like everything's kind of coming full circle here. Alright, so once you get to the Isle of Refuge, your raid force is going to essentially start the same way you did at level 1, and you're going to start on the left side and kind of make a counterclockwise loop around the island. So you're going to kill everything in your path. There's going to be these huge groups of Drakes. There's going to be some orc mercenaries that stand in your way. A couple names, so you'll just essentially fight your way through that. Doesn't take too long. One of the orc mercenaries has quite a few hit points, so and I think he's an assassin, so he does some AoEs that you have to cure, but it's no big deal. Once you eventually get through all of the trash mobs and the mercenaries, you're gonna go through the arches, just like kind of where like the skeletons are on the Isle of Refuge, and you're gonna go into the bay, and you're gonna notice that Darethar is flying and circling the island, and out on the beach you see this floating prismatic egg. So which is, you know, that's our goal. So however, Darethar is going to land kind of right in between you and the egg, and so now it's time to engage Darethar. Darethar's a decently difficult fight. I think it's recently been buffed a little bit, but he hits pretty hard just from a melee perspective. So make sure to get all your debuffs that you can. The most important thing to keep in mind, so we actually pull him into the water because there is a little bit of a knockback on, I think, the tank. But one of the things is to get on his back left or back right foot, it doesn't really matter, and make sure everyone in the raid, besides the tank of course, is positioned 3 meters 3 meters away from Darathar, and it's kind of like on one of the back feet. But there is an AoE that you have to cure. It has it's a dot, so of course you want to try to cure it as fast as possible, but I think it only ticks once every 6 seconds, so it's not that hard to cure. On top of that, again, make sure everything's debuffed, and this is going to be a really long fight. It's just got a ton of HP, so DPS it down. At every 25% mark, I believe it either has a chance to heal or it just heals a bit. So when that heal occurs, of course, it's just gonna make the fight even longer, right? But through a war of attrition, you eventually kill Darathar, and at this point, you actually learn that the egg is broken during the heated battle with Darathar. So it's unfortunate, but it's time to go back to Nagafen, talk to him, and essentially tell him what happened. So as we return back to Nagafen with the news, he's not as upset as you may think he would be of the egg being broken, because you actually learn that he already has a clutch of prismatic eggs that he hoards, and he just didn't want the one that was missing to fall into the wrong hands. At this point, you have this uneasy feeling because he's got all these prismatic eggs, but he gives you your prismatic weapon. So congratulations. I know this video has been a long time coming, but I had to do a lot of research, and I really wanted to fully understand the lore and the backstory, and share that with you guys. I also had to capture a lot of footage for this, as well as cut a lot of footage from different raids. But if you did enjoy it, please leave a like below or comment below, and if you like my content, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell, and you'll be notified when new content is available. Thanks all, and I will see you later.